And here we go. Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce with coaches Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson, where we are delving into the realms of leadership and coaching. Join us as we sit down with remarkable leaders and coaches, uncovering their unique strengths and strategies that really, truly make them exceptional. We'll explore the question, what is your secret sauce, and when and how did you know? Unveiling those hidden ingredients behind their success. Are you ready? Let's get started. Before we begin, a quick shout out to our season sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. So, Dave, what do we have in
I
store
am
today?
very excited to introduce David Tinker. David has got this amazing background and has created some amazing tools and is a professional dancer. He might deny that, but I'll say that he is. Before I get into accolades and embarrassment, we like to start off with an energy and focus check-in. So on a scale from 1 to 10, David, if you were to say what's your energy level, 1 to 10, 1 low, 10 high, and what's your focus level, 1 low, 10 high?
I've got about, thank you for such a wonderful and colourful introduction, Dave. My energy level's probably about 7.75. And that's because I kept checking my phone. Rather foolishly, I kept checking my phone through the night to see if who was going to be our next Prime Minister and which government was going to be in. So I had a night of some excitement and anxiety.
Yeah, that's news is an interesting impact on energy level. What about focus level? Well, on 1 to
Focused, very focused. Yeah, even though it's Friday, love the thought of being here and having had this on my mind ever since we talked about it some weeks ago. It's been kind of one of those milestones or something to look forward to. So you've got all my
Thank
focus.
you. And we
I even opened the door just now. There was a fly going around the room. I opened the door and let the fly out and said goodbye, saying, "Look, I need to be totally focused
Yeah.
on
Did
these
that
calls."
fly give you an update on the political environment?
No, he gave me a little wave on the way out, and he's disappeared off to
Oh,
better
I like
things.
it. Yeah, Matt's already saying there's no way I'm going to be able to control the D's today.
This may be our non-clean podcast. You never know, right? So.
Yeah, there's got to be one.
Oh, we'll come on to clean later. I'm glad you
Ooh.
mentioned that. Yeah.
Just I am at a an 8 in energy level, and I'm at about a 7.75 in focus. I am helping to take care of my 87-year-old mom this weekend, so I'm excited to spend some time with her. And Matt, what about you? Energy and focus.
Yeah, I was actually excited about spending time with David this morning. So um, I would say it's probably close to a 9, and I've had my second cup of coffee. So I'm ready, and my focus is high.
I appreciate that, and Matt and David, I've talked to you many times, and Matt and I have been partnering on this podcast with the purpose of hanging out with coaches and learning about their secret sauce and kind of what drives them, what excites them, what energizes, and what helps focus them. And I was very excited to speak with you also because you do have an incredible background and created some tools that we've used in some coaching classes, some different perspectives on the field of coaching, which I think is unique for the individuals that Matt and I normally talk with. You have a different way of looking at things, and I really appreciate that, and I want to invite that in today. And I have to say one thing, without doing all the accolades. I was talking to David a couple of weeks ago, and David has an incredible former military background, has created numerous things in his background. And then at the end of our call, where we were talking about educating students, he says, "Oh, and next week I have to go see the King." And I said, "What? What, David? Yeah, I have to go see the King." So I thought maybe you can do, the next time you are invited into an all a ballet class and they ask you to introduce yourself, how would you incorporate the visit to the King with the rest of your background? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the visit to the king and actually spending some time talking with the king was just a one I wanted to tell the grandchildren. One of these days I'm going to sit on the bed with them and they'll say, "Come on, Granddad, tell us a story." Well, I'm going to tell you a story about the day I met with the king. And then we'll take it from there. I don't know what's going to happen, but it'll be very exciting. So it was one of those days when, a bit like the ballet, which they'll go, "Nah, you didn't do that, Granddad." At least I can say, yeah, I met and shook hands and spent a few moments having a chat with the king.
That's so. I mean, it blew my mind, and I was like, I am in the presence of not just a great dancer, but and I guess we're going to talk more about your background as we go through. But I'm just going to kick off with the first question. What do you think your secret sauce is in terms of how you help others?
Mm. So, I've been thinking about this one. I think it's a great question, and I think I've got a meta source. And that's about holding the space so my clients find a source or create a source for themselves. That puts me, if you like, nowadays in the role of curator. So how do I hold the space for someone else to find out what heals them or gives them greater influence or enables them to be a better leader or whatever it is. So I'm a curator so as my clients can find source for themselves that just matches what they need. Now, if it, and actually Clutterbuck and Becker-Over both talked about this sense of, as we mature as coaches, and probably I get towards the far end of that in terms of age, we're kind of more able to do that than just a space holder. Now, if you think I've dodged the question, I have got another answer, which is I think what I can do with my clients, or what I do, is enable them to let go of or hold lightly their own sense making. So, and I do that by helping them with their perspective taking. So they've got a broader range of perspective taking, particularly understanding others that they might encounter. That's either externally, so people in their system, or parts of themselves. It's a little bit like Peter Hawkins does his six-eyed model in supervision. So if I encourage my clients to put themselves in the role of someone else. And what's it like to be them? What do they need? What do they fear most? And what's their heart's longing? And then we're stretching the empathy muscles with the client. They're going, aha, I didn't realize that. And out of that, um, we're getting additional skill of the client to do that, as well as an insight into a situation. So I like that bit of perspective taking, particularly when we understand what someone else might be fearing or longing for. And then perspective taking to step out of a story and step right back and go, what's the story I'm in? This is, I guess, some of David Drake's stuff. What's the story I've made up about myself and about this situation? And go, all right, no, there is a story I've made up. And I think with this change shifts in perception, we get insight. So it's when I've seen most aha moments is when someone's enabled their brain to make sense of something from a different perspective. But the key thing about this I've learned over the years with my own stuff, let alone everybody else's, is it takes effort to do that. It takes effort to let go of a perspective being true or right or the only perspective. It takes effort to think, oh, what's it like in somebody else's shoes? It takes effort to stand back and look at myself or myself, whatever I'm presenting to the world. So if there,
Do you have to give
Mhm.
them, David, do you have to give them language or words to describe that? Or is that just something that's more innate when you're asking?
Yeah, it's something. When they might mention someone in their team. So when you think of that person, what do you think might be on their mind?
Hmm.
And give them a moment just to imagine what it's like. What do they need? What's going on for them? What's important to them? So what we can do is train or warm somebody up to that role. I mean, this goes into some of the lovely work of Marino. How do we warm ourselves up to being into somebody else's role and what it's like to be them? And then ask, because part of us will know, part of us gets that. Oh, it's like that to be them. Okay, what's highest in their mind? What do they really want? Oh, I think it's this. Okay, now come back to being you again. As you engage with this person, have this relationship, how might that change how you are with them?
Yeah, we're probably not all that different than people that we have a struggle
Hmm.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you could tell us, like, especially given sort of that role of curator, how, when did you know that that was your secret sauce, the role of the curator?
So the background for me, right at the source of this, I was probably 16 or 17 when I was looking on television and I could see this lady directing a drama that was all about how what was going on in somebody's head and how angry they are that wasn't being expressed, and it was psychodrama. I had no idea at the time, but I was totally engaged with seeing this person's thoughts and feelings come alive on the stage. Some years later, after the military experience, I got heavily involved in psychodrama and sociodrama, both of which are forms where we get to stand in the shoes of others and embody their role and imagine and act out, if you like, from their position. So we can stand in the position of someone else at work, or we could stand in the position of a family member, or stand in the position of my critic, the part of me that beats me up or says that I'm an imposter. And when we can stand in that position, we get a full bodied experience of feelings and thoughts, and my body comes alive with what it's like to be in that situation. Now, I learned how to do this form with groups and got quite good at it. I could get a group in the room and bring a whole kind of organizational system alive in the room. And then I'd invite people to stand into various roles. So, what's it like to be your customer? Or what's it like to be your boss? And in these situations, I'd regularly get people going, aha, I had no idea. Then I get them to come outside of the room. Hey, what's going on for that group in the room? What's the story they've made up? Oh, they say it's like this. So changing these perspectives with groups was something I learned to do, and I learned I could get insight quite quickly, and also that the experience was persistent. By the way, guys, if I'm talking too much, tell me to shut up. The experience was persistent, and people remember it sometimes for years. They'd remember that experience of being involved in a drama. So, can you imagine if you're doing this with someone in a coaching session and they get to go to a movie about their life? So, this movie is all about your life. This is what's going on for you, isn't it? Aha. So, when I'm stood back and looking at this movie about my life, then I've got a different perspective on it. So, it started at 16. Not that I was coaching at 16. But I think that was when I realized what I needed to heal me, which of course was my route into coaching.
Yeah. What have you learned about inviting somebody into that space?
I've learned it needs warm up. I've learned it takes time and gentleness and ease to get somebody into that space. Do they want to do that? Where are they up to? What do they need? Does this really meet the way in which they learn as well and they want to learn, so their juice? Is the experience of standing in somebody else's shoes, is this really going to contribute to where they want to be or what their goals are? And I've learned to hold it with naive inquiry. So one of the lovely things, my teacher, Francis Batten, one of the things he taught me over the years, he said, bring your green Martian. And the green Martian lands on this planet really fascinated with Earthlings. Oh, it's amazing. You do that. No, you do that to the planet, or you do that with each other. That's really interesting. So I bring my naive inquiry into, tell me more or show me what's going on here. So without a judgment, that naive inquiry becomes a lovely holding space and an enabler in spontaneity to make something up. I think actually, as I'm talking, go on.
Is it? I said I would just. Is it important the physical part in the coaching? This ability to like stand. Not just sit down at a desk in a chair. It almost would seem like the motor function is important for the ability to put yourself in someone's shoes. So like physically saying like, hey, look, there's this mind body connection. Like, okay, now I'm going to actually go over here to the other side of the room and then I'm going to play your most frustrating customer, or your biggest corporate political rival. What do they really want? Now, actually physically go there. And why in the sort of the crossing of the room, you're becoming more and more that person rather than, the sort of the victim or even the perpetrator. They're out to get us.
I think that's, it was a wonderful luxury we had kind of pre-COVID. Do you remember that time? When we could meet with people and I used to go for walks, and if someone had a challenge around decision making, we'd go for a walk in the woods and we'd get to a crossroads. Okay, so this crossroads are your options. Let's go down option one. What's it like to walk down here? What's it like to walk down there? And who are you going to meet down here? And as you saying that, Matt, I'd notice how people are. How does their body change when they do that? So I think that movement's important. Nowadays, we've got a lot of digital tools to help us do that. So when we got to, let's have a look at immersion. So if we become immersed either in a story or in something in virtual reality, then we can have that same body or the somatic experience of, yeah, I get that. I can feel that here, or my body tells me there's something going on, because so much of coaching is reliant on words. We have a huge dependency on people being able to articulate. If there's, I think the research says there's between 50, this depends where you look at, or several hundred words to describe how we feel. I think ask the average man, he may have 5 or 6 that he can use. Now, ask him to find another form of expression. Hey, dance this, let's walk this, show me what this is like, or we can put some action into this. We're going to get a different expression of what's going on. We're going to get underneath the surface, or a different take on the, on how they're seeing things. Have I just dodged that question, or was that all right?
I guess that's why. Well, the reason why I asked the question is because one, oftentimes clients struggle to put words to scenarios or whatever it is, the difficulty that they're having with somebody. So you get very simple words. Oh, I'm frustrated with so-and-so, which I find to be a synonym for anger or something like that. Or, so they'll use words and they're close proximities, but they wouldn't know how to describe that inner landscape of what really bugs them. And so I just wonder, as a coach, is it
is it just holding the space, or is it providing the language and the space to describe that, or just to actually kind of coax it out of them to describe more of that feeling if my language is limited? Say I'm coaching somebody in a very sort of manufacturing environment, that maybe have colorful language, but it's limited. As a coach, is it my responsibility just to have them describe it in the ways that it's possible and not give them any language?
Yeah, I think moving away from words and sometimes moving away from synchronous to moving into asynchronous to give someone time to reflect. So allowing time. I think historically we've worked synchronously with words, and it's had to be verbal, and in both in therapy and in or counseling and in coaching. There was some wonderful work a group from Holland did around asynchronous support for young people who were struggling with drugs. And it worked incredibly well because it was asynchronous and they were using a lot of images on text. So I like asynchronicity. I like the opportunity for silence, and I do see it as some of my responsibility to get. I know when I've asked somebody how you doing, they say fine. I take it as my responsibility to create the safety and some language for me to understand, or for them to say what's going on behind fine.
I have this ongoing, since I'm at my mom's this weekend. I have an ongoing conversation with her over the years where she asks you, "Are you okay?" And then you say, "I'm okay." "No, are you okay?" And I had to tell her, I said, "Mom, like, eventually people will make up something just so that they can answer your question." So it's kind of like one of the things that I've struggled with in that transition from when I've done in-person things that disrupt people's thinking without asking them if they're okay, and just do an exercise where they leave their anxieties, and then we can move to a different space. I have not been able to replicate that in a virtual way. The closest I got is when you introduced your Rethinkly app, to get people into a different space. I'm just wondering if you can comment a little bit on, what was that experience designed to do to put people into that virtual space?
Yeah, well, the Rethinkly app came about because I'd been doing some coaching with someone, and he just said, "Look, can we do something else online together?" And I wasn't very techie at the time. We're talking about 10, 12 years ago. So, and then in my researching how to do coaching online, I fell into Second Life, and all of a sudden that light bulb went off for me about, oh, I can do this sociodrama and psychodrama online. I've got avatars, and I can do some magic with that. Now, ever since then, and the software is designed on either constellations or psychodrama, sociodrama, any of those forms, but it's all about making visual how I make sense of the world. So I can use avatars in a virtual world, and I've got an avatar at a crossroads. So I can stand that avatar at the crossroads and notice how it feels. If I view from that avatar, I notice how stuck I might feel with the decision making and what do I need. Um, I also studied story and storytelling at Emerson College, so I was intrigued by, and David Drake's wonderful book on narrative coaching expands on this notion of how we use story and narrative in order to make sense of our lives. And when I did some work with David, actually, I was quite shocked when he said, "Oh, so what's the story you make up about your life?" It's like, oh, okay. So I'm holding that story I make up about my life, but it could be different. But in Rethinkly, there's ups and downs, there's crossroads. One of the lovely features of Rethinkly, there's a gateway. Now, in storytelling terms, we quite often meet a gateway. A gateway is the beginning of an adventure or it's the end. It's the crossing from one phase of life to another. Or I quite often get leaders who are just approaching the gateway because they're about to be promoted. And at the gateway, you have a gatekeeper. And in storytelling life, the gatekeeper says you can pass here through this gate, but what are you going to give up? What are you prepared to leave behind? And then we can embody and get someone into that avatar and walk through the gate. And then to your point, Matt, notice, how does that feel when I walk through the gate? Now, because we can get quite high levels of immersion, it can be just the same as doing that in person in a forest, because someone's right in the scene and walking through a gate past the gatekeeper and then meeting their future self. So Professor John Sula did a lot of work on this, and he coined a couple of aspects of working in virtual worlds that kind of made sense. I'd like to think I base the design of my software on this, but actually it's just retrospective sense making. You get high levels of disinhibition with virtual worlds. People, it's very difficult to bullshit. You might have to edit that out. It's very different to not tell the truth. We get high levels of disinhibition, so people get very open in virtual worlds. We get dissociation, so I can talk about that angry avatar that's there, so I can be slightly safer. And I can feel at one with the story. It's a little bit like going to a movie or a play, when you enter another world, and that world becomes the reality. So what I learned from the design and subsequent research that we've had associated with the software, it has very powerful juice. In terms of, and the other thing we can do is this changing perspectives. You can step into the role of anybody else, whether it's parts of yourself or others, and then take a view from the sky and look down on your story you've created. Is that enough of a plug?
Wow. Yeah, that's really that. Yeah. So for anybody that didn't get that, I would take a look at Rethinkly, and we'll actually put it in the show notes so that people can actually get access to it as well.
Well, I'm going to give you access to it so your listeners can have access, and you'll get me talking you through an imposter syndrome process. So that'll be live whenever you put that up on your notes.
Great. Thanks. David, what would you want from a coach?
So, and I'm thinking of, and I have my supervision as well as my therapist. I actually don't have a coach. I probably have several mentors. And I enjoyed doing a bit of a list for this, so I came prepared. I want them to be there for me without judgment. And I judge myself bad enough. Don't judge me as well. I want you to remember where we've been together. So with my coaching clients, I do make notes. So after the session, I make a lot of notes, and I always read those notes before I go into the next session, because I want my coach to remember where we've been on this journey. I want you to ask me open questions and then give me the space and hold the space for me to consider. I don't want to feel like I'm under pressure to respond to that open question. And engage me in communication that's not just words. So I could show the answer, I could move the answer, or I could do something. I in my supervision diploma, we had to do some supervision using musical instruments. So I play the tuba, and there was this lady with a tambourine, and I had to do supervision with her, with me playing the tuba and her playing the tambourine. And it was one of the most powerful bits of supervision I've ever done. Now, some of you might be thinking that's a bit strange. Only think it's strange till you've done it. So there are other forms to communicate. Please communicate and engage in other forms with me. And ask questions of me with genuine curiosity, not on behalf of your own agenda or because of your structure. So ask questions with genuine curiosity. So that's what I want from a coach.
Nice.
Yeah. How did you need to adjust the tambourine?
there was the tambourine was timid. It turned out she presented a very timid supervisory question and uncertain. And however we then, so she played the tambourine and then I responded with the tuba. And then she played the tambourine and I responded with the tuba. We did this for about 20 minutes until she found more confidence in her tambourine and how close and what it meant to her. It was a very, very powerful process. And when I started, I would have thought this is bonkers. But I can say, hand on my heart, it was one of the most powerful and meaningful bits of supervision I've ever done, using music. So I'd like it. I think it's really important. There are other planes of knowing out there that it would be good to open up to and not close off.
I so appreciate that.
I just wonder also, some of the listeners were like, what in the world? And I think obviously I think that's important, to just try different things and to experiment.
Different ways to express. Yeah, listen, you're talking to an ex-military helicopter pilot here, so I couldn't be doing all of this. I have come from another world, but I think there are so many different ways for us to express. And one of the things we do in Rethinkly is we use a lot of metaphor and symbolism. And Access, we know from research how the brain lights up with symbolism and metaphor, and Access is different material for us. Let's be open to those possibilities.
Yeah, it reminds me of something Ken Blanchard once talked about is as an adult when you bring your kids to the zoo, you're spending so much of that role. Don't do this, don't get hurt, don't do this. And he said, you know what? Every once in a while, go in as a kid, squish ice cream against somebody else and, have fun. And I like how you describe like you and this is partly my reflection and we're gonna my reflection is you started out talking about being able to hold that space, create that space where people can hold some of their anxieties, barriers lightly, is some of my interpretation, to move forward, right? To create their story going forward. And you've worked in your career, in your life, to find different ways to be that curator of that space. And I really appreciate that.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, letting go.
David, what would you recommend for somebody that's fascinated or interested in exploring a little bit more on your perspective? Top 3 resources.
Yeah.
You could give
Only
more.
3.
I mean, obviously, you're,
Okay. I'm I'm going to give the giveaway is you can have access to the software and you'd have to click on. I'll send it over to you guys, and that's got the imposter syndrome stuff on it. The wonderful book that inspired me was Metaphors of Mind, Penny Tompkins and James Lawley. That introduces us to 2 things. One is clean language, which and I guess there's part of me that gets in my supervision. I notice how much coaches can bring their own stuff and their own interpretations, and I'm forever inviting them and encouraging them to let go of that and be as clean as possible. So I love the clean language approach, but also Metaphors in Mind. They talk about the use of metaphors and what's on someone's mind. In other words, how we do our own sense, how our clients do their sense making. So I really like the principle of clean and of using visual. The other one, my favorite app is Plum Village. Plum Village, I don't know if you've ever heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhist. It's got some fantastic meditations on it. And it is the jewel on my app or on my phone that I go to my daily practice of meditation. And when I don't do just a sort of silent meditation by myself, I might go to Plum Village, and there's some beautiful guided meditations. And I'm just grateful that Plum Village is there in the world. And it's a free app to download. And that, I guess, behind it for me is for coaches to be more connected with themselves, and provide a better service for others,
Nice.
and with self-compassion.
Dave, I know you've actually kind of shared your reflection, but so I'll jump in with mine. I think this idea around the story that I'm telling about myself, I think is a really fascinating one to ask a client, especially given some of the victim language or just not seeing other similarities between my coachee and maybe someone that is out to be, you know, the chief villain of the organization that's sort of disrupting. That was sort of remind me. I always got one of those. I'm going to will totally confess that is always something like, oh, there's always an enemy, and there probably may be more similarity. I'm more similar to them than I really would. If I just had a little perspective, I'd probably realize there's more things that are the same than different, and that could go for anything. And it allows me to give a little bit more compassion and then also some perspective. So I appreciate you bringing that up, David. That is really, really good. So
I'm gonna cheat and do a double reflection, because you made me think. It David has gone to the extremes of experience, like military, psychological challenges, and not a lot of the coaches we talk to like go to those bounds, right? And it almost like it makes me think part of your practice, David, is that all that work that you had to do to create safety in those extreme places, and finding tools and finding ways to do that, is, for me, one, I appreciate it, but it also tells me we need to strive and work on ourselves and go deeper and not be afraid to go to those extreme places.
We know when that happens, the look in our eyes will say it's safe and how I regard you. When we open our mouths, the tone of voice that comes out will say whether it's safe or not and how you're regarded. Those can only be influenced by our personal work.
I can only breathe, and I just downloaded that app. I am really been hired by Matt's wife to
there you
provide
go.
this message. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to empower obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatters.us.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization.
Thanks, Dave. David, is there anything anybody needs to know in order to get access to that Rethinkly app, or to get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Rethinkly. So search on internet for Rethinkly. That app, I'll send the link to you guys, and I take it that'll be on the notes accompanying this podcast, and that'll mean that anybody listening to this can have an experience, have a play. You just got to listen to my voice, and I'll guide you through a process of just exploring your imposter syndrome. And then what I'll do is I'll give you my email, so that'll if anybody wants to know more and have a chat about it, then just let me know.
Wonderful.
Spread the good word.
Thank you, David, for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it. This is our last episode of the season, so it's even more special to us to get to spend time and hear your perspective. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate that, both of you.
Thanks.